Hello there. So today I'm going to continue looking at some of these comments and questions that I've received on social media, specifically about the fictional novel that I am writing with the help of people on my social media group who give me insights and help to analyze the different chapters and storylines. So I'm going to have a look at some of these comments and questions and analyze them. I've got a lot here, so I may not get through all of them in this one video, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so we're carrying on from where we left off in the last video, which was called Tea Tree's Trajectory to Freedom Earth. So you don't have to have seen that one in order to watch this one, but if you want the full picture, then that's given in the previous video. So let's go into these comments and questions and see where we go with them. So first, a comment rather than a question. This is a comment. Magenta, I feel this is 100% accurate, as in the fault lying with all of the falsehoods that are being delivered in the community of individuals who are the readers of Patriotica magazines and the readers of the Truth magazines. So we're looking at that community. What this statement is about, I'll just recap, is individuals listening to Mr. Tea Tree the Gnome standing on a podium, talking to the villagers, the elemental beings that live in the village, and actually being very disappointed with that speech that the gnome gave. So this person is saying, in response to a comment someone else made, that the fault lies with falsehoods being given within that community of Truth magazine readers. And this person goes on to say they are all throwing hissy fits now. I have left the final groups I belonged to that were readers of the Truther magazines. I notice I have so many expectations when I pay attention to them. So I'm with the person who posted previously regarding frustration. I'm with the previous poster on frustration. We all wanted something grand. But I'm oddly calm. Something is definitely in the air, and the Schumann is also spiking today. So I'm very grateful for this community of light warriors during this time. So what this person is saying is, information's been given out across all these different communities within the village, mostly from individuals who read the Patriotica magazine, the Truth magazine, and those also who are pretending to be readers of those magazines and are not. They're actually infiltrating those groups and communities within the village. And what she's saying is, we all expected something grand rather than the speech that we got from Tea Tree the Gnome. And that's why she's understanding frustration. But this person, well, he or she, is feeling oddly calm. Schumann resonance is spiking. Something is in the air. Okay, so this was my comment. It's a challenge for me to understand the hissy fits from those who are awake. I totally understand the normies' fury, and I expected it. But I'm trying to understand those who are awake feeling this way. Is this because they felt the crash and clear out of the large water that's got lots of sludge and mud and, you know, it looks like a swamp? Is it because they felt that the clear out of that was imminent? And they thought that Mr. Tea Tree was going to stand on the podium and announce that that had been done. If so, then that is because they believed deliberate falsehoods given, just as you have said. I've steadfastly maintained my stance, and whilst I wish I could have reached more people so they would be elated right now and not having hissy fits, you cannot reach everyone. The white-capped pixies were never in control, but they've always been involved, they've always been engaged, and that's the difference. They've always been watching. So that was my reply, and I think that's self-evident. I don't really need to go into more analysis of that. If you go back to the previous video, Tea Tree's trajectory to Freedom Earth, it explains all of that and the entire picture about the white-capped pixies and how they're not in control, but I explain the chess game that's taking place and where they stand in that chess game and what's going on in that chess game and why some people are saying the white-capped pixies are in control and the overlord vampires are panicking. Why is that being given as a picture? And I explained that in the last video. Okay, and someone just commented, Magenta, I really need to listen to this speech. I haven't heard it yet. And I replied and I said, you really must. It was amazing. And I have to admit, as I knew we were in this for the long haul, for me, it's such a pleasant and most welcome surprise to hear these words spoken by Mr. Tea Tree after only 2 years. So that was my post, my reply to that. And I have explained that and why I felt more surprised that it's only been 2 years. I was expecting, when I was told by the 9 to cultivate stamina for the long haul, they didn't say the long haul. They said cultivate stamina. It was me who then said, right, we're in it for the long haul. Now, I may have misinterpreted that. Maybe it's not as long as I thought. And obviously, it's only been 2 years before that trajectory is back. That's all explained in the previous video. So I don't really need to go into that anymore either. It's kind of self-explanatory. So the next comment stroke question, Magenta, have you not paid attention to our last 2 competitions? The beating of the drums and the ticking of the boxes. So that's what the pixies and elves do whenever they make it be known who they wish to win the top banana competition. They beat drums to give out a signal and they tick boxes on little forms on parchment paper to make it known who they wish to be the winner of these banana competitions, to be the top banana. So what this person is saying here is the beating of the drums and the ticking of the boxes does not reflect the will of the Fae, of the villagers, because we are looking here at lots of rigging on the village ship. So when you're on a boat, you'll see lots of rigging. The boat itself is rigged because of all the ropes everywhere. That's what this person is saying. And we just got, this just happened again recently. We're all back on the boat looking at the rigging and climbing up the rigging. It just happened again. So why are people, they weren't necessarily talking about me, why are people advocating that we beat the drums and tick the boxes again in order to fix everything? Okay, really good question. So my reply, so what I said was, in my fictional novel, Gloria Love, she spoke to the Fae and she said to them, you must tick the boxes and you must beat the drums in the competition. The true numbers will eventually be declared. And that is why Mr. Tea Tree has always said, tick the box, beat the drums, beat the drums. This cannot be done without the villagers in all domains, in all domains. This is not just the US Philamericano domain. This is all domains in the whole village. No matter what you think is going on, eventually this will trickle down to the whole village and all the quantum villages within the spiral of reality. This cannot be done without the villages in all domains, and those boats with all the rigging and all the ropes will eventually implode as they are finite. So I would imagine we're looking here at the boats sinking, a sinking ship. So again, that's self-explanatory, and I have also talked about that in the previous video. So I'm just kind of going over what I've spoken about in the previous video. Okay, next comment. Magenta, I thought things would happen before the year declared that ends in a 4, and that we would have a complete dissolution of all the falsehoods and everything out in the open by the end of the year that ends in 4. My reply to this: if you've been following my material from the 9, you must know that this was never the case that's been presented by me, because I've made it so clear and I've not given any dates or timelines, and certainly haven't mentioned the year ending in 4. I did say that in the novel something significant would happen in 2023. I felt this was spring, early summer 2023, and it was specific to the juice. That's the only thing I've said. And I've also talked about the trifurcation. So we're in a bifurcation at the moment in the novel, which is a split between 2 consciousnesses taking place within the village, and that we're moving into a trifurcation, and that the seeds of that are being planted around about now, and we are moving into that, and that becomes evident in many ways on the road to 2031. So that's the only other transmission that's been released, and I should really do an analysis of that one actually as well, to talk about that more. I go on to say lots of things will be in the open by the year that ends in 4, and obviously the year that ends in 4 is something that will be looked for within presentations in the village, because you do have large, tall wizards that work for the vampire overlords that go around and listen and to what you're saying and have a look at what you're saying. And that's what happens in these stories, in these dark fantasy stories. So I will sort of sideline here and say that in the village, some of the fairies get a bit annoyed when Gloria Love talks to them, because they're fed up with listening to stories and they don't want to hear about all the gnomes and the pixies and the fairies. They want something more substantial, and it's too difficult for them to listen to the stories. But obviously the Fae will need to realize why Gloria Love tells the stories, and that's in order to be able to deliver information to those who truly want to hear that information and are happy to listen to stories along the way. If you don't like stories and you don't want to listen to stories about elves, pixies and fairies, you don't like fantasy fiction, science fiction, crime, mixed in with a bit of horror and with a massive, great, universal and galactic love story at the end. If you don't want to listen to that, then you just close the book and go read another book. Okay, so although lots of things will be in the open by the year that ends in number 4, it's not about linear time. So all of this date stuff, they're just markers. It's not about linear time. I know linear time is how it plays out in the 3rd dimension, but what's really happening is way beyond linear time. The 9 said, cultivate stamina and temperance. The 9 gave us this so we could access the tools within that we needed to ride this through, so we do not come up against shock, disappointment, anger, or have hissy fits. I don't really know what hissy fits are, but yeah, I guess I do. All we feel is the euphoria and the clear sight into the freedom and ascension trajectory for Earth, which is now in sight more than ever since the magical words spoken by Mr. Tea Tree the Gnome. So that was my comment to that post, and again, that's looked at in more depth in the previous video. Tea Tree's trajectory, gosh, that's a tongue twister. Tea Tree's trajectory. Try saying that quickly. Tea Tree's trajectory to Freedom Earth. That's the previous video. Everything is really gone into in more depth there. Okay, next comment. This isn't really a question, this is a comment. Magenta, it was a low energy speech. The crowd were tired and Mr. Tea Tree seems defeated. Running for the number 4 means he went into a conceding, and this announcement is a big nothing burger. He didn't even want to talk about the flipping of the squares. So Magaroony is disintegrating. So Magaroony is Magaroony is a gnome that lives in a little hut and makes hats. He makes these little caps, and they're not white caps, but they hold the energy of white caps, but they're actually more of a ruby crimson color, and they stand for something to do with making the Americano domain great and amazing. So he's saying that the Magaroony is disintegrating. My reply to this was, dearest one, I think we saw different speeches. However, I'm going to have a look at this from my perspective. So this is somebody else's perspective. It isn't wrong. It's their perspective. So it's true to them, and it may well be true to many others. I'm going to give you my perspective on this without invalidating the poster's perspective, because there isn't really a wrong or right here when it comes to perspective. It's simply the way we view something, which I've spoken about many times. So it was a low energy speech. So perhaps compared to other speeches, as in, you know, when Mr. Tea Tree rallies everyone around, maybe it could be perceived that way. For me personally, it was high energy, very high frequency. And I've spoken to others who feel exactly the same way. But it's not to say that it's wrong to say it was a low energy speech, because that's the perspective of those people, and their perspective is valid. As I said when I spoke in the previous video, Tea Tree's Trajectory to Freedom Earth, what you feel and what you perceive from something adds to its creation. So if you want to add to the creation of everything Mr. Tea Tree said, then moving into the knowing of the joy of this and the high frequency, high energy, and the magic of it will assist in the creating of it. And that isn't something you have to falsely find, because if you truly believe it was a low energy speech, then that's for you to look at and move through your own analysis of reality and your own personal integration to see where that takes you. But for me personally, it was a high energy speech. It was a high frequency speech. I didn't have to falsely find that. That's my genuine perspective and my belief. And I can't say it's a knowing of a high energy speech because it is a perspective, but that's my perspective. So the crowd were tired. Again, I didn't see any evidence of this. I saw the fairies picking up their little lights. They looked like little squares with lights in, and they were all showing those squares. And then afterwards, the little squares, they can show the squares to other people who weren't there. They were all there doing that. And I had no evidence or opinion or insight or feeling that the crowd were tired. But again, it's a perspective. It's a valid perspective. It isn't wrong. That's their perspective. That's what they saw. I personally didn't see that. Mr. Tea Tree seems defeated. Wow. I saw the total opposite. I think it's the complete opposite of defeated. So it does make me wonder, you know, is this person saying this, genuinely feeling this, genuinely making this comment because that's their opinion? And if so, absolutely valid, as I've said. Or is this someone infiltrating the communities because it seems such a it seems such a low vibrational response, but it could be genuine. And I don't know. I think it probably is genuine, but I'm sure there are others out there saying similar things who are trying to bring that energy down. So Mr. Tea Tree seems defeated. Not at all. I saw the total opposite. I saw a calm person who has been, who's had a rest, who has, you know, has had some time off from all the constant attacks and has become stronger and is ready and focused and absolutely a warrior. and the opposite of defeated. That's what I saw. It's interesting how people see such different things from one thing, but then that is personal perspective. Running for the number 4 means he went into a conceding. I did discuss this yesterday. The words were not, I'm running for those bananas and I'm going to get 4 bananas. The number 4 wasn't tied in with that speech about running for the bananas. If you listen again, you'll see what I mean. So there was a way to use the words and have those words interpreted as running for 4 bananas, but there was actually nothing that was said that, which doesn't mean a conceding. I did discuss this in the video I did before. This announcement is a big nothing burger. So for people who were expecting information about the flipping of the squares and the pulling the plug on that huge, great, dirty river and getting all the sludge out and all those things, then perhaps that's how it appears to them. For me, it was a massive something burger, and it was a double, triple something burger. There's tons and tons in there. It was so full of burgers. But they're veggie burgers because I don't eat meat. And I did actually post a picture of a beetroot burger on my social media because I like to get little pictures to post alongside the posts. And everyone said how delicious the beetroot burger looked, but that's completely off track. Anyway, I don't even think the Fae eat burgers. He didn't even want to talk about the flipping of the squares anymore. Well, that's a perspective, and obviously because he didn't talk about the flipping of the squares, then that might suggest he doesn't want to. I think that's not correct. I think he absolutely wants to talk about them, but we are looking at strategy, as I explained in the previous video. The flipping of the square conversation can no longer be coming from Mr. Tea Tree. I'll tell you for why. There are genuine people out there who support Mr. Tea Tree, but are looking with more of a objective eye on the system that's presented. Good people, but they're not fully aware of the vampire overlord structure. They're just simply seeing the sapphire blue and the ruby. So when they look at that, they analyze it as it is. And so when Mr. Tea Tree talks about the flipping of the squares, a lot of people are like, oh, whatever, here he goes again. He can't give in. He can't step down. Come on. It's like, oh, you stole my sweeties. You took my this, that, and the other. Yeah, whatever. And it's in one ear and out the other. It's just not taken seriously by some, not all. I mean, the people reading, the true people reading the Patriotica magazines are fully aware. And most of them don't. I think most of them realize it's not because he doesn't want to talk about them. It's because that's not the way of the strategy. Not now. But the fact that it was spoken about so much in the past will come back again full circle. And that's when they will be able to say, wow, Mr. Tea Tree was right, as they're always saying after the event. And they will say that again. So it's good that Mr. Tea Tree is backed off on the flipping of the squares, because that's coming in from somewhere else. As I said yesterday, we're looking at Cariana Rivers, the Lady of the Lake, who holds the hilt of Excalibur, the sword of truth. And she's sitting within an inevitability. So that's where it's going to go. And, with those people who look at the situation as it's presented, good people, honest people, positively oriented people and polarized people who don't necessarily see the full picture, when it comes in from the Lady of the Lake, it'll be, oh, wow, there might be some merit here, because the Lady of the Lake is not Mr. Tea Tree. And so in their minds, in some people's minds, she may carry more weight because she's a different kind of person and doesn't appear to be someone who throws her toys out of the pram all the time. Now, Mr. Tea Tree doesn't do that either, but he's been portrayed that way. So even good people are thinking that's what he's doing. He's throwing his toys out of the pram. And then when the Lady of the Lake steps in, it's like, right, maybe there is actually something going on here. So you've got a wider base of individuals looking there with more seriousness, seeing her as perhaps having more credibility. You're still going to have people who ignore it and think, oh, she's throwing her toys out the pram just like Mr. Tea Tree. And you're going to have people who know that Mr. Tea Tree isn't doing that. But there is another group of people that's now being touched upon who will be looking at the Lady of the Lake and the Orion zones. So we've got a wider awareness going on here. So that's why he did not talk about the flipping of the squares. It's not because he doesn't want to, but that would not be in alignment with a good strategy at all at this point. So he was right to not discuss it. And then the final thing is Magaruni, this is the little pixie that makes the caps, is disintegrating. So that's a perspective, and that is what is being seen. So with everything that's being seen, the conclusion with this person is that it's disintegrating, or if this is infiltration, then that's deliberately putting that out there. But if that's a genuine perspective, then that's their perspective. They're seeing Magaruni is disintegrating. That's what they're seeing. And that is being reflected even in some of the fringe media outlets within the village at the moment, as well as, you know, we know that's being reflected in the Sapphire Blue owned sort of journalist broadcast systems, but it's also even a little bit coming in to some of the fringe ones. My opinion, I personally think that there's been a little bit of unsettlement and confusion and puzzlement within the Magaruni. So we are looking at readers of the Patriotica magazine, but when I say Magaruni, the Patriotica magazine individuals, from my perspective, see the whole picture. But then you have other Patriotica readers who are seeing it as it's presented, as in this is Sapphire Blue, this is Ruby. That they're not seeing beyond that. Those individuals, I feel there's been a bit of confusion, a bit of unsettlement, especially regarding the two gnomes, and I'm talking about Mr. Tea Tree and Santarello, the two gnomes, the situation there, that's caused a bit of confusions. But does that mean the Magaruni hat maker is disintegrating? Well, I don't see that. I see ripples and just a bit of a shift. I don't see a disintegration. Now, when I actually step back and look at the whole of the Magaruni, it's as strong as it's ever been. When I look into the future, and not very far into the future at all, the Magaruni is actually bigger than ever. It's actually expanding, not disintegrating. It's as strong as ever. That's the truth. It's not necessarily being presented that way, but that's what I see. So I would say, from my perspective, Magaruni is absolutely not disintegrating, which is why I replied, dearest one, I think we saw different speeches. What I meant by that is, wow, what an absolute difference of perspective. But if that person's being honest and genuine and is not just someone who's trying to, you know, create dissent within the awareness, then that person's entitled to their opinion and entitled to their perspective. Okay, Magenta, what about the squares turning red again? So this is something I did look at in the previous video, Tea Tree's trajectory to Freedom Earth. So it does look like I've kind of covered all of this. So this is really just a sort of a bit of a recap, really, I suppose. What about the squares turning red again? And my reply, it cannot be seen to come from Tea Tree. It must be someone else appearing to lead this parade. Excalibur rising. Who holds the hilt of the sword? So what I mean is, look at the Orion zones, look at the Lady of the Lake. That's where this is coming from as a seed point into the current competition, which will eventually then uncover the last competition, which will eventually then go global to all competitions across the village. That's going to take time, but it's going to happen. But as I said in the previous video, the Overlord Vampire, Sapphire Blue team, and all the minions and that structure will do everything to scupper this, everything. to shield it, to distract from it, to point the finger here, there, and everywhere, and they will play every trick in the book. So this isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but there's an inevitability there regarding this, and the inevitability is the Lady of the Lake and what she does, and that's the key. And they are aware. They're aware of this, which is why, as I said in the previous video, that's why they made sure that the squares were flipped in the Orion zones. Because when I look at the actual energetic, the blue squares were literally hardly any. I mean, it's such a small number. You are looking here at a ruby tsunami in the Orion zones, and the beating of the drums for the Lady of the Lake was the loudest beating of the drums you could possibly want to hear, and all those forms were ticked within the ruby box. That's what I see. So that is the actual infiltration there was pretty much equal to how it was in the last competition for Mr. Tea Tree. They knew. However, as I said in the last video, that's an inevitability, whether the Lady of the Lake had received the small banana for the Orion zones, or whether she didn't receive the banana for the Orion zones. Both of them lead to the same outcome, which is the exposure of the flipping of the squares in the Orion zones, which then leads to the flipping of the squares in the previous competition, and then it goes all around the village into all domains, and that takes time. Okay, so I carried on speaking here. I carried on responding to that. What about the squares turning red again? It cannot be seen to come from Mr. Tea Tree. It must be someone else appearing to lead this parade. Excalibur rising, who holds the hilt of the sword. It's a good job I've understood the Nine's teachings and worked on cultivating stamina and temperance, as I received the red squares vision months ago, when Gloria Love in the novel got into the hot springs. I understand that it takes time for the pre-matter energetics to manifest in the physical. So that's why I worked on cultivating stamina, because what I saw, I knew wasn't going to manifest immediately. It was going to take time. And what I'm talking to you about now is also going to take time. I then went on to say, Mr. Tea Tree has always been standing within the top banana frequency, and Mr. Tea Tree has always been standing within the top banana frequency, and whenever that would manifest before the eyes of the world, meaning it's going to eventually, as I explained in the last video, but at the moment it's not been visible. So I then went on to say, he never left that position. He never left that position. He's always been that. He's always been the true top banana. Mr. Bebop is a false placement and has never held this top banana frequency. I did discuss that in the previous video as well. The speech with Mr. Tea Tree on the podium was the first time in 2 years that this particular truth has been presented to the world. So I'm talking about everything that was spoken by Mr. Tea Tree. It's the first time in 2 years that this has been presented to the world, as in truth spoken rather than regular falsehoods delivered. Let those with eyes to see and crystalline activated quantum DNA to know, to stand rightfully within joyous celebration at this time. As long as we have enough star-seeded light workers holding that flame of emotion, then we hold the critical mass energy for that clear trajectory. It is not frustration, cynicism, hissy fits, moaning, disappointment, anger, or indifference that will get us there. It's knowing, insight, inner wisdom, strength, power, and holding the torch for the indigo revolution, and knowing who stands at the helm. Our leader is back in plain sight. And as he humbly steps down into the round table circle, he does not concede leadership, but he gives power to the people. This is the only way. It is now, and it is done. So this was the declaration made by Gloria Love as she spoke to the fairies. So I did discuss this in the previous video. As long as we have enough star-seeded light workers holding that flame of emotion being joyous celebration, that joyous celebration puts out a frequency that must create a mirrored match. Then that happens individually to that individual, putting out that emotion in their own lives, specific to what they're putting the emotion into from, but that can actually infiltrate all areas of their lives. So if they're in joyous celebration about Mr. Tea Tree's speech, they will find other things in their personal life to hold joyous celebration for, because as above, so below, and so below as above, it all reflects together. So that's individual, but when it's done collectively, when you have enough star-seeded light workers holding that flame of emotion, of joyous celebration, high vibration, if you will, that is what creates everything that Mr. Tea Tree was talking about, and moves that into that inevitability and creates the inevitability, as I said in the last video. So frustration, cynicism, hissy fits, moaning, disappointment, anger, and indifference. Indifference is not neutrality. Indifference is not 0 point. Indifference is I don't care. That's not the vibration that's going to move into a positively polarized singularity. 0 point is creation. It's full of possibility and potential, whereas indifference is I don't even want to look at it, because it's coming from trauma. And I spoke about this in the last video. So it's knowing, insight, inner wisdom, strength, power, and holding the torch for the indigo revolution, and knowing who stands at the helm. So what that means is almost as if you're looking at a ship and you have all the workers on the ship, and you need every single crew member of that ship to allow that ship to sail on the seas. The captain is the one that stands at the helm, but the captain isn't the one that sails the ship alone. The captain has got to have the crew and the first mate. And, you know, I know very little about ships, but, you know, there's a big ship in the novel, and the gnomes get on the ships, and the elves and the fairies get on the ships and sail from one island to another in the sun, having fun. So knowing who stands at the helm. So they're just the person who's at the front of, if you see the manifestation of a singularity as an arrow within the field, the arrow point is the trajectory. It is the line of intention. The person who created the intention stands at the helm of that line, and the person who takes action to ground that intention stands at the arrow point of that line. That's the intention. And everyone else who catches onto that jumps onto that ship and gives power to the steering of the ship. You could also look at, you know, a canoe or a rowing boat. You've got the leader there looking at where one is going, and you have those with the oars allowing the boat to move. You can't move the boat without those that row the oars. So that's who the star-seeded light workers are. They're holding the flame of emotion. They don't have to do this through Mr. Tea Tree. There are star-seeded light workers on this trajectory who are not following Mr. Tea Tree. They're in that energy through something else. Some of them may reject Mr. Tea Tree and think that, you know, not even like him, think that he speaks nonsense, but they're still on the boat through something else, because the flame of emotion is the joyous celebration, which is bliss charged love. That's the frequency of it. But if you are reading the Patriotica magazine and you are following Mr. Tea Tree, then to actually move into frustration, cynicism, moaning, etc., you're not on the boat with him, because you're looking at what wasn't, you're looking at what wasn't said, and you're disappointed and let down because of what was not said. And going back to one of the previous posts, this is because misinfo has been given within that community. And that misinfo is, it's happening, it's happened any day now. This has happened, that's happened. And that kind of information did not come from me, it's come from others. And in the community that I have, where we talk about creative writing, reading books, reading novels, we talk about world building within a creative writing capacity, discuss the different genres of creative writing. So when we do that, I do talk about the information that I have and the chapters that are coming in the book, and nothing has ever been like that. It's never been given. In fact, it's been rejected. So if something is posted in my social media from somebody writing a completely different kind of novel with a totally different story, a totally different storyline, that doesn't match my novel, then that doesn't align with the group energy, and it doesn't align with what is true. So it's deleted because it's a falsehood. It's misleading and it's a falsehood. And so that's why I feel so many people were in frustration, cynicism, anger, or indifference, just like the previous poster said, because they expected something very, very different. And who made them expect that? You know, so we all need to look at our expectations. And if we are frustrated by what was said or disappointed, why is that? What did we expect, and why did we expect it? What made us expect something different? Where has that information come from? And have a look at that. So then I went on to say, our leader is back in plain sight. So that could easily be misinterpreted by people listening to me saying that, oh, Magenta Pixie says Mr. Tea Tree is our leader. That's not what I'm saying. Our leader is back in plain sight. What I mean by that is this: in this particular manifestation, through everything that was spoken of when Mr. Tea Tree stood on the podium and spoke to the fairies, everything that was said creates the magical act for the manifestation of it. So he therefore stands at the helm of the trajectory of the intention. Therefore, in that particular area, he's the leader. But that is only one geometric configuration into manifestation. And it's one perspective of that geometric configuration. The true configuration is the round table. And that is being given, and that was given within that actual manifestation, as in Mr. Tea Tree's actual speech contained the round table giving. The round table structure is in the manifestation. So whilst he may be leading within that particular manifestation, within that particular structure, he's changing the geometry of how that manifests through the actual magical words and the manifestation of them in the first place, because he said, this is us, we. So that is why I said our leader is back in plain sight. So our leader, as in the person at the front of this particular manifestation, is back in plain sight, meaning he's being seen now. He's not hidden. He's not in the shadows. He's in front of the spotlight, if you will. He's in front of the cameras. And as he humbly steps down into the round table, so what he's doing through the speech, through the manifestation and the magic of the words, as the leader, he's stepping down into the round table. He's basically saying, I don't want to be the leader. I'm doing this for you. And this is a true leader. This is a true leader. And in a balanced society, this is the only kind of person that could be a leader or in the top banana position. That is the only way, not just the domain, as in country, will thrive, but the village, all the domains will thrive. And eventually that is the case. There will be these types of individuals in top banana positions across the entire village. That's the only way one can lead, because one does not lead as in, I am your leader. I am going to command you all and you will do as I say. That isn't a leader. And we've been led to believe within the story, within the novel, that is how one acts and stands in leadership, whether it's business, even the family, even the parents. You are the children. I am the parent. I will tell you what to do and you will do as you are told. Yes, there has to be boundaries and within families and children, of course, but it's not that structure. The structure is, I'm your leader because I'm at the helm of this manifestation, but I can't do it without you. I need you. This is an act that we do together. This is unity. This is unity. So the structure of unification, alchemical unification, which is the alchemy into true unity, that is all presented as a full transmission in my new book, which will be out very soon. We're in the final stages of editing that. So that particular structure isn't just about the top banana. That structure is needed for ascension itself. And this is why the top banana position in the Americano-USville domain is so tied up with ascension, because it's the same frequency. It's just on a different dimensional level. So that's all explained in my next book, which will be out soon. I don't have an absolute date, but we're working on it every single day to get that out as soon as possible. So he humble, as in opposite of ego. People always seem to think that Mr. Tea Tree is an ego gnome. No, he is a firestorm gnome or a stormfire gnome, because he has the storm, he has the fire. But that's not egotistical. That is a specific vibration or emotion needed to get the job done. So it's just the fiery personality. It's not egotistical. It's not ego in the sense of, I am your leader and I command you and you do as you're told. That's not the energy. Humble is the energy. Humble as in giving to all, becoming part of a circle, not wanting to be a leader, but only taking the place because there's no one else that seems to fit that position right now. So you know that that's your mission. No one fits that position. No one is standing up. So I better do it because I know I can. That is the energy within the Mr. Tea Tree Stormfire Gnome. I'm going to do this because I know I can. No one else is. I'd rather not. I'd rather just go off and have fun, but no one else can. I'm being called to by something greater than myself. That is what Mr. Tea Tree is thinking as a Stormfire Gnome. So he humbly steps down into the round table circle, which is the unity structure and the new governance for the village. All the village will be governed by the round table. That is the geometric structure in alignment with the creation of all planets, all domains, all villages, all realities that are in alignment with source and true creation. So what we have within the village at the moment is the distortion of that, is the inversion of that. And we are going back to the organic structure. And that's happening in all walks of life, in every area. It's not just about the top banana of this, it's everywhere. It's being reflected everywhere, everywhere. So he is not conceding leadership. So he's not giving up the position of leadership, but he's giving power to the people, as in power to the elves and the gnomes and the fairies, giving the round table structure back. This is the only way, as in, this is the only way it can be done. it is now and it is done. And that is said because it is done within the pre-matter fields. This is an energetic that has already taken place. And in a certain respect, this has already been done on the physical level in certain ways. Certain steps have been made all the way ever since the last competition. There have been certain grounded magical spells, magical acts that have taken place. Now, the individuals moving within that may not necessarily know these steps are magical acts or acts into manifestation of a template that's going to move into physical creation, but that is what they are, because they hold integrity, they hold action, they hold right action, they hold action that's in alignment with all that is true and pure and good and with source creation. You don't have to know you're in alignment with source creation to be in alignment with source creation. It's about integrity. It's about doing what is right action, being sovereign. That's what it's about. So that's why the magic and the manifestation spellcasting within Mr. Tea Tree's address to the gnomes and fairies of the village holds all of that, because it comes from all of that. That's why it's so strong. And right now, the galactic energy matches that. It doesn't match the inversion. That has to be done through the lower fourth dimension. So that is a different field. And when the lower fourth dimension is the predominant field that's holding the manifestation for a planetary system within the village, then that's what gets manifested. But when that planetary system within that village moves into a different space galactically, and different particles and energies within this tetragrammaton event horizon edge flip from one reality to another, when that all takes place around the galactic core, as the planetary system goes into that consciousness, then it is the larger reality, the reality in alignment with source creation, that it holds the strength and the power for manifestation, especially when critical mass is reached, which is what's occurring with the aware and awake star-seeded individuals and the readers of the Patriotica magazines who stand within temperance and cultivate stamina. All those people, and just one person standing in that sovereign state, cultivating temperance and stamina for this, holds so much energetic power, energetic light, and creational ability for this. Just one. And when you've got hundreds and thousands and possibly even, well, you have got millions, possibly even up to 1 billion or more. I don't have the numbers, but they're huge. When you have that and they're all doing that, you have a creational field that turns into a singularity. And a singularity is an inevitability, because a singularity is the node point of all the timelines. So that's why this whole thing is so tied up. You know, I've had people say to me, what Mr. Tea Tree said is nothing to do with my individual ascension process. Well, on a third dimensional level, looking at that extremely literally, that's true. You know, what my neighbor does has nothing to do with me. That's true. But when you actually look at the unification, the alchemical unification, which is a perspective taken by an individual who moves into the higher awareness, the Kundalini awakening, the ability to truly see with the pineal gland, the true insight, moving down those veils and getting right to the core. When someone can do that, then everything is connected. So absolutely, Mr. Tea Tree's speech is connected to your personal ascension process. When you are able to hold the perspective of how and why. And I'll tell you for why, because it's in alignment with source creation and ascension. And if you're going through ascension individually, you're going through ascension collectively. And this is a manifestation towards that. So that's how the connection is there. And you can deny it all you want, but if you move into true awareness of this, it has to be there, because this is unification. And anything in alignment with that source frequency will match it and will manifest within it. So that's why there's such significance to this particular speech by Mr. Tea Tree. And it's not the only one. There's loads more to come. Loads more to come. You know, when we're looking at this chessboard, we have the white-hatted pixies as well as the vampire overlords. They're both equally 50-50 on the chessboard. That brings me to something else. Someone else said, you know, where is the 50-50 manifestation, Magenta, that you said was going to occur this year in 2022? Again, this is a difference in perspective, because for somebody to ask that question, they clearly can't see it. Well, in my perspective, it's absolutely there. I see it clearly, very, very clearly, because if we didn't have 50-50, and it was more of an energy coming in from the vampire overlords, as in stronger than the white-capped pixies, then we would not have the freedoms that we have. And that's another thing. People will perceive what we have at the moment as restriction and lack of freedom. And that's true, it's there. There's absolutely restriction and lack of freedom. If you perceive that, though, and you see it, and you know that that is what you have, you will continue to find it all the time. You will constantly be restricted, and you will constantly have lack of freedom, because you know it's there and you see it. Therefore, you manifest it into your reality. When you see freedom, you will find freedom everywhere. Within the restrictions and the freedoms, you will find the free way through. And that's what the 9 mean when they say there's always a back door. There's always a portal out of that situation. So if you see freedom, so for me, this 50-50 is absolutely evident. If anything, it's higher coming in from the white-capped pixies. But I explained all this in the last video. Tea Tree's trajectory to Freedom Earth. I just like saying it. It's such a tongue twister. Okay, next comment. Okay, Magenta, I'm hanging in there. No matter what happens, I believe in the inevitability. I've had to give up on being attached to specific outcomes for my sanity. Laughing face. And I replied and said, yes, the singularity is the focus, not the timelines on the way to it. So you don't be attached to any specific outcome, but you see the singularity, which is the only outcome that can occur within all of the timelines, but you don't become attached to it. This was all explained in the previous video as well. I went into that in quite depth. Next comment, Magenta, if they haven't fixed the flipping of the squares, then this is futile. I want to still hope Mr. Tea Tree would not waste his energy if it wasn't going to be sorted. But on the surface, this was a very disappointing speech for many of us who believed that something would be done by now. So I have kind of covered this, but again, it shows how many people are feeling this way. My reply was, we are in November of 2022, just to remind you. So that was my post, meaning we haven't got there yet. You know, we've got time to get this done. Lady of the Lake, the Uriah Zones, and all the other things that are occurring. So that was all covered in the last video. Now, when this person said, I want to still hope Tea Tree would not waste his energy if it's not going to be sorted, I replied and said, read all the posts on this channel, go back and listen to the speech again, meaning listen to what I've been saying, listen to what I've been posting, which is all in my last video, and then listen to the speech again, listen to Tea Tree speaking on the podium to the elves. Everything's there. The spell casting is there. The manifestation for that particular outcome is there. That template is there. And that's to do with the flipping of the squares. Of course, it wasn't said, but it was manifested. If you listen again, you will hear it, but you must listen with all your senses, not just literal 3D interpretation. You aren't going to see anything with just 3D interpretation. And most things will be disappointing to you right now. and possibly for quite a few years to come. If you just see things with the 3D eye, you're going to be disappointed non-stop, because it's not going to be what you think it's going to be, because everything is working as it comes down the dimensional field into the physical reality. I recently did a fundraising talk with my friend D. Taylor Mason. That's not available on this platform. However, you can find it. It is actually to be purchased, and the reason for that is it's a fundraising. I did a talk for a fundraiser. I didn't have any, I didn't get a single penny from this. Neither did Cat's Magic, who helped with all the sound and the tech stuff. We gladly gave up any income for charity, for not charity, for the fundraising, which is a local freedom community group where I live, who have lots and lots of plans that are very much in alignment with everything I'm talking about, Ascension, New Earth, and will be very needed. So Cat's Magic and I entered into this project as part of our giving to that New Earth reality. And because the act of speaking itself was a fundraiser for the New Earth reality, I asked the 9 if they could talk about the New Earth reality. So everything I'm saying about manifesting and how it will work in the physical reality is all in that talk, and it's £5, 5 English pounds. So I presume that's off the top of my head $7. I mean, I'm not very good at doing an instant financial currency switch, but it's not much, and the money is going to the fundraiser. So if you want to hear that speech, I will put the link in this video as to where you can find the recording of that talk, which my particular talk I entitled New Earth Seeding, the seeding of New Earth. And so that's about how is New Earth seeded, and how will it manifest in the physical? What will it look like, and how will it affect us, and what can we do to step up and assist? So that's all in that talk. Like I said, I'd love to be able to offer it to everyone freely, but it is for a fundraiser, and every penny is going to this group that are doing such good things. So that was my commitment to be able to raise funds for that group. So next thing that this person said that I commented on was, on the surface, this was a very disappointing evening for many of us who believed that something would be done by now. And I replied by saying, if I also believed something had not been done, I'd be feeling the same way as you. This again is such a difference in perspective. The perspective is coming in like nothing's been done. My perspective is loads has been done. This is the difference. That's the perspective. So the reason why I'm not disappointed is because I know loads has been done. And this is a culmination, or the next stage in lots of things that have been done, and lots of things that are yet to be done. So I am not holding the perspective that something needs to be done by now. I don't hold that perspective, because to me it is being done. So we have very different perspectives on that, and that is because of the multidimensional view as opposed to the linear view. So if you think you're multidimensionally viewing, but you're feeling like nothing's been done, then you're not. Because if you were multidimensionally viewing, you would see that something has been done. So that is your path to move back into the knowing and the integration of what multidimensionality means in and of itself. What does it mean to view multidimensional reality and the patterns behind things, including someone talking, someone speaking, someone's actions? What does that actually mean? So one needs to go within to discover that, as I said in the last talk. Okay, I've commented on this as well. It seems that people think Mr. Tea Tree went into a conceding once he announced that he was running for the top banana spot. I did not realize people thought this way, but he absolutely did not move into a conceding. If you listen to his words, you will realize that there's no conceding. I discussed all of this yesterday as the announcement to run for those bananas was not in any way tied up with the number 4. So whilst there was the banana run mentioned and the number 4 was mentioned, they weren't tied together in the same space. Therefore, the conceding is not necessarily given, because one has to be very careful with language in a physical sense as well as a multidimensional sense, because within the law system, language is also interpreted differently and can be manipulated. So one needs to be careful how they speak when they're teaching spirituality or talking metaphysically, discussing creative writing and stories and story characters and world building, and in the the reading of the Politicano magazines, and also within law, legalities, and all those things. One has to watch the words they say. So that was a clever and accurate move, and a positive move by Mr. Tea Tree in the way that the words were structured. Okay, completely different question. Magenta, would Santarello be able to go into that big dirty pond of water, pull out that plug and drain all those dirty reeds and mud out? Would he be able to do that? Does he have the ability to do that? Does he even understand what that big piece of dirty water is, like Mr. Tea Tree does? And my reply was, great questions. And my answer is, lovely though he may be in his own way, no, he simply does not have the understanding, the personality, or the ability to do this job. Pull out that plug and get rid of all those, the sludge and the mud and the dirt, get it down that plug hole. He does not have the ability to do this job. He does not understand what this piece of dirty water is. He doesn't really see it. And if you look at my recent story about the 2 gnomes, Mr. Tea Tree and Santarello, this is actually explained in that story. Magenta, you said you don't understand the Americano reading of the Politicana magazines very well, but I have to say you have a deep understanding, and I think your take on all this is spot on. But here's an additional thought. They walked back their flag that is not the flag that it should be, about what was dropped in the land with the very, very large sort of poles everywhere, the domain with poles throughout, long, like if you go to a pole dancing class, then every single person will have an individual pole, and they will be able to dance around that pole as they learn pole dancing. I know somebody who does pole dancing. She's getting really, really good at it, actually. It's kind of like yoga on like a pole. It's actually really, really fascinating. So something was dropped into that dance studio with all of these pole dancers, and I think the person's talking about the stone throwing. I discussed this in the last video. There was stone throwing from one domain to another. And so she's saying they walked back that flag that it, was flying, that's not the flag that it should be. After the announcement and after the speech and the talk by Tea Tree the gnome, they walked this back. And so all of the narrative that was set to happen immediately has not happened. And I'm just wondering what they thought Mr. Tea Tree had the potential to say as he addressed the gnomes and the fairies. It just makes me think that the that particular moat of water around the castle in the village runs very deep, specifically to Mr. Tea Tree's talk. It all runs very deep. What did they think he was going to say? My reply, well, thank you. That's regarding this poster's compliment on me actually understanding the Politicano magazine very well. I replied and said, I actually think I'm pretty naive on Americano, US-ville, Politicano magazines. However, I guess to the average person in the UK domain, I am pretty boffed up on it. I must admit, I have spoken to other people who really in the UK domain just do not have a clue. And some of them don't know, you know, the UK Politicano magazine, let alone the Americano Politicano magazine. However, it's energetic insight and empathy really that I have, not the reading of the Politicano magazines and the know-how within that magazine. In response to the second part of your post, though, yes, for sure. So she's talking about the stone throwing and the gymnasium and all the pole dancers. That's what she's talking about. And the flag that's being flown around that gymnasium with the pole dancers in, that is not the flag that it should be. So it's like a fake one. In response to that, I replied, yes, for sure. They were setting the stage to go full on and saturate the all those little gnomes that have cameras and are filming. They wanted to saturate that structure, you know, like kind of like media, really, I guess. Saturate that structure with a story that would override the Mr. Tea Tree speaking on the podium story. They had no idea what Mr. Tea Tree was going to say when he got on that podium. All the fanfare and the build-up did suggest more than I'm going to run for those bananas. So this was a kind of misleading, not misleading, but it was a kind of a strategic play on the behalf of Mr. Tea Tree. And unfortunately, that has the, you know, true Patriotica readers, or certainly those who have been reading the Truther magazines, it's got them caught up a little bit in the hype and the fanfare. But that was done also for the Vampire Overlord structure as well. So the thing is, Mr. Tea Tree is such a, what word can I use there instead of that one? He's such a, you know, like if you're in a jungle and a lion comes up to you and is going to eat you, you would see that lion as a threat to your life, wouldn't you? Because you think, oh, that lion's going to eat me. So this is what I'm trying to talk about. They're seeing him as that to them because they don't think he's going to eat them. We won't go there. He's such a threat because they think he's a loose cannon. You know, a cannon that will just let off, you know, that will fire off without any planning. That's what they think he is, you see. So that's why they were concerned about what he might say when he got on that podium. Now, the thing is, he was this a bit in the past, for real, not just an act. He actually was that, but I wouldn't call it a loose cannon. I would say an open person who, when they get talking, they just speak. I'm like that. I wouldn't call myself a loose cannon because I know when to not to speak. But I'm open. And when I was younger, I guess I was a loose cannon. Yeah. I think, you know, people who have the gift of the gab have to, you know, learn how to speak and when to rein things in, when to speak. And kind of he's got that. I mean, he's indigo, isn't it? You know, an indigo firestorm gnome. So this is going to happen. So he was this in the past, but I went on to say he has balanced that and he has turned what could be perceived as a fault into a skill. So this shows he still knows how to give the overlords a merry dance. And what could he have said indeed? Lots. So this was a great comment, meaning there's so much, and that's what the commenter was meaning. I wonder what they thought he was going to say. He's obviously got something to say that he's not said yet. Well, of course he has. So that was a great comment and a really, really good observation. So yeah, I've got to the end of this particular section of questions that I picked out. I mean, there are so many questions on this subject. I don't obviously want to completely overwhelm my video creation with this subject at the moment. But I hope that with the last video I did, Tea Tree's Trajectory to Freedom Earth, say it one more time, I hope with that video and with this one, I've kind of shown how magical this is and how it is tied up with manifestation, ascension, the moving into New Earth, the moving into 5D, because people don't understand how that can be connected. And I hope for those who are aware and able to think multidimensionally and have that expansion in their thinking and in their fields and are holding that consciousness, will understand the importance of that. And I hope that my perspective has assisted you perhaps to reevaluate yours. That doesn't mean I'm telling you to change your perspective, because I'm not at all. But I do feel that perhaps some of you may feel you want to reevaluate your perspective. And for those who are already on the same page as me, it's just confirmation for your own knowing, as always. And that's usually the majority of the people that watch my videos and listen to these stories. So thank you so much for listening once again to the stories about the bifurcated village with gnomes, elves, fairies, pixies, witches, wise women, wizards, warlocks, overlords and vampires. It's a fantastic dark fantasy that is turning into a wonderful novel, and I do appreciate all the help that I've had from people on my social media sites. Especially, I must put out a thank you to my Telegram group, because that's where I discuss most of the creative writing, and I've had so much assistance from people. And I now have people on the Telegram group that are writing their own novels as well, that are in a similar vein with similar characters, so we can all talk about our stories together. And I think, you know, creative writing is a wonderful thing. Fiction is a wonderful thing. I mean, don't you just feel fantastic when you walk into a library or a bookshop and you're surrounded by books? So that's what the main thread is all about on any of my social media. And again, here on this platform, everything I talk about is related to spirituality, metaphysics, Kundalini awakening, meditation, creativity, and fictional storytelling and creative writing. I don't really talk about anything else. So if you're looking for something that's in a different subject matter, you won't find it here. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again. Bye.